The hero's journey and your life and soul purpose. So in today's video, I'm going to try and keep it short and sweet, but I'm not always good at that. But what I'm going to talk about is understanding your own hero's journey and why it is a fundamental part of your soul purpose. But it's also can give you almost like key nuggets of what is your life purpose. And when we talk about life purpose and soul purpose, some things can be interchangeable. But when we talk about purpose, often people think about it as if you achieve, it's like an end result. So people, it's like everything, a lot of people are very, very impatient today. And they want to reach a certain goal. They don't always want to do the work, right? Or they want to know now everything. And in many ways, your purpose is an ongoing process. It's like spiritual awakening and a spiritual journey, and it's like the hero's journey. It's like we may achieve certain things in our life, and that's great things, and that's a huge part of your purpose. If you think people that have made huge contributions in the world through society, decades ago, and they were maybe well known for that contribution, and that would be a big part of their purpose. But often there'd be maybe other things in their life that was part of their purpose that you would never know, you'd never see. And I think sometimes what happens, people get really caught up in what they deem has to be a big purpose, as in it has to be something that seems very grand and is very visible. And one of the things that I do know is that, it's like the butterfly effect. When you're living your purpose, it's not just one big shift that you are creating, and it's like some people are so caught up in the amount of followers they get, the amount of clients they have, the amount of people. And of course, to run a healthy business, you have to have an aspect of that, or it becomes just a hobby. But if you think about business, many people run a business, but it's actually not their purpose. Their purpose is maybe bringing up their family, or maybe they have foster children and other things. So some people run a business because they do something that they like to do, but there's another area of their life that is their purpose. So, sometimes people get very lost in this. But, and um, life is something that we live and we experience. And I do believe that we all come in with, there's certain gifts that we come in with, right? There can be gifts that are, the nature nurture thing where we, in our environment. But I do believe, and there's different reasons I believe that we do come in with our own key gifts, and they're really a really important part of the makeup of the world. The challenge is that we sometimes don't understand or see other people's gifts. Now, I've always had a fascination for gifts from a child. I don't, well, there's one experience that I can only share with you that gave me a drive about purpose, and I wanted it, so I studied it in so many levels. I mean, I've been studying things to do with purpose for at least 33, 34 years. I started to look at all sorts of things in self-development in my late teens because it was something I was fascinated about, and I loved helping my friends like do self-development things and explore and identify their gifts and help them look at career possibilities. And I was quite good at that, so I enjoyed doing that. But one of the things that I remember as a child, I was brought up as a Catholic, and I remember something that we're told about, not keeping. I think I've just looked recently and it says something, you light under a bushel, but I thought it was your gifts. So even though it is you're like under as a child, that's what is your gifts, and it's maybe was talked about in a child's perspective, and it was like almost a sin in a way not to share your gifts because you had been honoured with these beautiful gifts, and that was what your part to play in the world. So for me, it was very, very important. And I suppose that maybe because of the Christian aspect, maybe a shadow element, that I was frightened I wasn't sharing my gifts. So I remember I was a really good singer, and I did love to sing, but I wasn't always the most confident standing in front of people. I just was really, most people that knew, I found that really hard. I loved singing in the choir, and I was often the one that was the loudest in the choir, and they would get me to do certain tones and things like that. But I was really, really shy about doing that. And even though I went to college to study singing, I suffered stage fright. I thrived in a recording studio. So that kind of thing. And that's common. We all have certain gifts where there's some aspects of those gifts we can't understand the light and the shadow. But interesting enough, my life would end up me just the fact even I do meditations would help me create, for example, uh, guided visualizations. And guided visualization, for example, was something that I loved, and I studied all the medical research and on, and I used guided visualization for my own well-being very early on. Some things had phenomenal results, and some other things that didn't work out as well, but I knew the power in it. So combining a lot of studies I did about colour and energy and words and NLP and the power of things and how certain visualizations work and color and all this, the different psychology and vibration and things like that. It helped me utilize that with my voice because one of the things that I learned as a singer was to control my voice and use my voice in a certain way. So it was easier for me to do meditations. So often, uh, you know, when we go to create a business or we create a career, we're often, it's accumulation of gifts and skills, right, and experience. But there's often underneath all that now, even if I hadn't learned to be a trained singer, if I hadn't learned to study all these visualization, all these different tools that I studied, even if I didn't do all this research and whatever, there's still key things about me that never change, that is a strong part of me since a child that I do every day, no matter the circumstances. And that's a really core foundation of your purpose. There's certain key elements that often we don't see. And it sometimes takes certain types of work to bring that to the attention. Now, one of the things that I notice, I would say that everybody I've ever worked with, even though the ones that really think they know their gifts, I often can identify more gifts or see things that they are not seeing because we're not very conditioned, particularly probably even in the UK more than even maybe the States and things like that. I mean, I work with sometimes Australians, Canadians, I've had different countries, from Africa and, you know, India and things like that. But what I would say is most clients I deal with are either American or UK. And one of the things you can see sometimes cultural differences that those in the USA tend to um, not be as shy about stepping into what their gifts are, but also there's still a lack of, and many of them seeing themselves through the eyes maybe of someone else, or actually really seeing what the qualities are that the for example the clients are really attracted to. And it's one of the things when you're creating a solo line business is understanding your gifts, but also understanding your values, because we all actually have different values and we all have different priorities, right? And those values are actually part of our purpose, right? And our values take make an integral part of how we show up in the world and what roles we play. Um, Now, if you think about a leader archetype, for example, there's certain values that a leader archetype has to have. Now, that leader archetype, those values might not work in other situations, but they are needed in a situation that we need leadership and when we need someone to take the lead. And you think when we're in difficult circumstances and something that you don't know and you need someone, for example, to lead a country out of a difficult circumstance, there's certain type of qualities that are needed to deal with that task. Um, and for example, if a country is at war, there is certain type of, might be more diplomatic skills, or in a situation where there is, it's when you think about policemen needs certain qualities. Now, each policeman will have different combination of different traits. So within one team or station of police officers, they're all going to be different, but they're also key things that there'll be values and things of what are similar purpose. There'll be some slight kind of why they've went down that route and what's important to them. And that makes up a really important part of our purpose. Now, the challenge is that we all have very strong, there's certain things that are very strong in us all, and what we call archetypal traits. Now, sometimes people misunderstand that they think that archetypal traits show up exactly the same as it in everyone, and it's not. Sometimes it's very subtle, sometimes it comes with a different flavour. It's almost like somebody's a gingerbread cake, somebody's a carrot cake, somebody's a cherry bakewell. I don't know if this is a great analogy, but basically then, but they could have a slightly different flavour and a seasoning made slightly different. So one could be made without gluten or sugar and all this kind of thing, right? So that that is an element. Now, they actually do make part of up of how we're driven and how and what we focus on and what we think is important. Because I can meet so many different healers, coaches, and therapists for lots of reasons. They will be very adamant about what's important, because what's important to them, they think it should be important to everybody else, right? And I know that has been one of nine. We have completely different views. Now, we do all have, there's some things that we do share values of, and there's probably parental values that have been carried over, but we're fundamentally different in what we think is a priority, right? We also have, when it comes to our archetype, we can have blind spots and shadow spots. We all have them. I have them. And I've been reminded recently how, like, one of my strongest things is the rescue. And even though I'm a lot better than what I used to be, it's also that protective mother, want to protect people. And then sometimes maybe being too far and being like the protective mother, trying to maybe lead things. And it's also when trying to wake people up. Sometimes I'm trying to like, come on, or even when I see somebody with these beautiful gifts, and particularly if it's a client who's maybe not a certain, they're not ready, or they're in real resistance. There's something there that's really blocking them. And they maybe not putting into practice what you're giving them or what they're to do to try and help them, or they're not seeing something. A bit of the kind of rescue and protective mother, sorry, I thought that was off, that, comes into play for me sometimes. And I have to, and sometimes I make mistakes. I'm human. Sometimes, I think also we're going through so much awakening. There's so much shadow coming up with us all. And we all sometimes do things that other people don't see why we're doing it. They don't see the bigger picture. We also see this because when we go through also the archetypal journey, the hero's journey. So the hero's journey is it's like almost stages of our spiritual and our life journey and our life path. And your hero's journey, it's not, some people might think hero's journey is like an age thing, that, you start off as a child and then by the time you get a certain age, you reach, it's not that at all. So sometimes people end up in one aspect of their hero's journey very early in their life. So say, for example, someone's a cancer sufferer very early on in their life, a child or something, and they can go through they have to grow up and they have to go through certain stages and they reach a certain real level of that hero's journey. Now, of course, that person might recover, might become their own hero, and even have a certain level of awakening or even sense of enlightenment in certain areas of life, but they may have other areas where they maybe need to work through. Now, one of the biggest things that can stop you really fully stepping into your power, because fully living your purpose requires you stepping into your power, right? And what does that really mean? It means different things actually in some ways to different roles and different, but in essence it's about you stepping into your channel and your God connection and your connection with life force, so that what you're guided to do comes through, right? And of course, all of our egos get in the way, and all sorts of things can happen, right? But the reality is, it's more and more about doing that, right? Now, the hero's journey is a pathway, but we all have blocks along that pathway. And the easiest way to explain it is if we think about someone growing up, right? One of the biggest things when you look at archetypal wounding, for example, is the different archetypes that cause different problems with people and their wounding, right? And the four main survival archetypes that people get stuck at are like the inner child, right? The the victim, the saboteur, and the prostitute. So if we look at the inner child archetype, the person will struggle to fully embrace their power and their inner hero, and their courage and their strength, if they have not moved out of the inner child archetypes. So the inner child archetypes, the easiest way to explain it is if you think about the divine child, the eternal child, the magical child, that's the positive light aspect of the child archetypes. And there's all different types of archetypes. So you can look at even the innocent and the orphan are often the most common known, and the ones that we use when we're talking about business and brands and things as well, right? Now, if you look at, for example, the orphan archetype been carrying a lot of wounding around feeling abandoned, feeling rejected. It's almost sometimes they feel like what we refer to in the UK is like the black sheep. The fact they feel as if they're the black sheep of the family. They feel as if they're the odd person out. And it's just an analogy we use to describe anyone, because in Scotland it's mostly white sheep in certain places, right? Or in certain countries, mostly. Right, now, if you think of a child, right, and children don't necessarily to be physically orphaned to feel like an orphan. Every single person at one point in their life, or many times in their life, feel as if they're the orphan, the one that's left out the group or whatever. But someone that's strong in that negative shadow will actually bring that energy with them. They bring that energy that they're abandoned, they're the odd one out, to an environment. So they can be aloof, they can be very reserved, and they can be very held in. Now, often that person is seeking belonging, acceptance, to be part of a community. They want to belong. There's a loneliness. So one of the great advantages of the light aspect of the orphan archetype is that as a healer or a coach or a therapist, even people like social work or community projects, they have a great capacity to want to help everyone else feel as if they belong. So brands that have got strong orphan archetypes are very powerful at being accepting of everyone and being welcoming to everyone and treating them. So that type of value in business is for a certain type of purpose. So their purpose involves, a community or a project that is welcoming, that family community aspect. Now, there can be shadow elements that can cause in a business, because if you create a business and you're not, one of the biggest problems that a lot of orphan businesses don't survive is when they can't dissect, because they want to make it open to everyone and anyone. They really struggle with niching down and deciding what is who their business is most aligned with, because it's not always about you wanting to welcome everyone and to, be, it's about you knowing what your brand and your business is, who it's going to be most aligned with, who you best serve, and who's going to be most aligned with your products and services, the way that you do it, right? So one of the some of the problems that an orphan archetype, because they have this feeling of rejection and abandonment, they want everyone to love them and they want to cater for everybody, and it's their wounding, so that can cause big problems. And they can stay very much in their child archetypes and not grow up, not take self responsibility for their own wounding, or not be aware enough to see when they're actually, how could you say, they're actually in some way keeping themselves out the group by some of them, maybe their behaviours, their body language, their energy, or where they're actually going into groups where it's like, I remember having a friend years ago, and she definitely had a lot of abandonment issues. So what she would do was she would push herself into groups and put herself in circumstances that was not aligned with her. But she wanted to be loved so much and she wanted to be part of something. She would just go anyway, she would go into reckless situations and put herself in groups that were very vulnerable or not aligned with her values or aligned with where she felt comfortable. So that can be a problem. So when we understand this, we can understand that that can stop us getting our purpose. So it's like people getting into charity and projects, and they try to, fit in with all people and be all things, but struggle to be anything because they're still not. The aspect of the orphan archetype when it's stuck is it doesn't really know itself and is so used to being interchangeable and want to be one of the team and one of the family that it's not carved out its own identity strong enough. So the orphan archetype is is basically frozen when it's not, the shadow element, if it's stuck in that and it's not went through the hero's journey, it's stuck and it can come in ways of, not taking maybe self responsibility for certain things, maybe a lot of resistance, being like a child, like a tantrum, and not doing what they need to do, like the hard work, avoiding things. And there can be a bit of procrastination and things like that as well, because they're just, but it's like that child, no, no, or I'm not getting my own way, that kind of thing. Now, that can show up in other archetypes as well, but I'm trying to give you like an idea. Now, the innocent archetype is also one of the child archetypes where people can get stuck. And I'm going through the process like a lineage because it's easy to explain. So the innocent archetype has magic. They have this divinity, they have this optimism, purity, they have simplicity. Right? I've got a friend and it's got that energy of there's a lightness, there's a fun. They're naturally in their life being light and fun, right? And they've got an optimism, they've got hope. They're the purest, but they also can sometimes be a bit idealistic, unrealistic. So they are not seeing things objectively. They see things how they hope it will be, they want it to be, rather than sometimes reality. So you often find a lot of innocent archetypes struggle with maturing, becoming the adult, facing the dark, looking at the dark. How can you say? Doing the dark work, wanting to recognize there's dark, think that if they just keep looking at the positive, that's all it's about. But they basically thwart their growth. And they also, it's like that Pollyanna, which is looking at everything, but not always understanding the consequences of just looking at the light, dismissing the dark. So they can be dismissing the dark in other people and only looking at things from their own. It's like a naive child that only looks at things one perspective, right? So we all have that, and of course, right? But how that can stop someone loving their purpose is that the divine aspect, they have such power because they are really tapped into the divine and they're still holding that magic. And I think what's happening at a core level is they're frightened to lose that innocent, that purity, the magic by looking at the dark. But what they don't realize is that to be fully in their power, in their life and soul gifts, they need to mature and face the dark with that power, with that light, because that is one of the most powerful archetypes that can be used. Because in the right context, the light and the divinity of the innocent archetype can be a great teacher and healer. They can be a great, what you call, if you think about the Zen masters, also have a bit of the kind of innocent. It has a slightly different angle sometimes than most what we're talking about, but it still is an aspect of the innocent archetype because it's about simplicity, it's about cutting through things, but it's an ability to look at both sides, and that is where the wisdom arises, right? And if you can bring that innocence and that purity, and maybe it's not just looking from an innocent perspective, it's looking at it from a divine perspective, the light into the dark, because that's what a light worker is. A light worker brings the light into the dark. They don't hide away from the dark. They don't, pretend it's not there, because guess what? It's far more painful. It's like a child that has to grow up really quickly, and then it's a huge shock because it's much quicker. It's like, we all have a natural progression. If we can go through the stages of growth from child to teenager to adult to elderly in a natural way, it's far more easier. But if, for example, if someone's a child and they've got to fast track to be the mature adult, that causes all sort of problems. But that can happen with many adults who are stuck in that Peter Pan energy or that childhood resistance. So that gives you an example. So when each of these archetypes, like the orphan archetype, can step through, and it goes through its journey to the hero and the innocent, they move from the child and the mature into then the adult that stands in their power and has their unique qualities. And not just their archetypal qualities, there's other qualities that we all have. We bring life experience, we bring all sorts of things, right? Now, other examples of that, for example, someone's stuck in the rebel archetype, and that can be that the teenage, if you think about all the teenage thing, right? So if you think about the rebel archetype who just wants to rebel, or the archetype that didn't rebel, right? So maybe becomes a rebel in their adulthood. And also we see some of that in inner child, where they become a rebel, or they're really angry, or they're really if you don't agree with them, or they're so radical in their views that it's like chaotic. And what's there is there's a lot of wounding maybe around people controlling them, maybe people pushing them in a direction they didn't want to go, and they're still carrying that wounding with them today. So they don't recognize when someone's trying to. So one of the things about a rebel archetype is, see, even in business and strategy, and that's one of the things I don't tend to work with a lot of really strong rebel archetypes, because if they're really strong in the rebellious archetype, they don't like strategy. They come to you for advice and come for your help and come for you to create a strategy, but they don't want to do the strategy. They don't. It's because they don't want to break through rules. It's also when this destroyer archetype is strong in its shadow. What it wants to do is basically break down structures that are already working, right? Because even though I'm a great believer that a lot of old structures are breaking away, and that has to happen. The old, and that's even my spiritual marketing club was based on breaking away old egoic structures in business and marketing that were not serving spiritual aligned businesses, that were, we're still falling into the very masculine or old way of doing things. But one of the problem when the rebel archetype doesn't grow up and the teenager just keeps being rebellious, or is so much wounding, or this seeking for freedom that they can't find within themselves because of their own wounding, their own suffering, their own pain, they bring that rebel in some way, and sometimes it comes out maybe in unconscious. It comes with deep anger, resentment, rage. So the there's something, the sense of freedom, there's something they want to escape from, but they've not been able to harness and put that into a powerful focus, right? So often they've lost direction, right? They've not healed their wounds and have not come to terms that, like, if you think of structure, everything in the universe has actually a structure. Even though I do believe in flow and things, I think about structure. Structure is like maths, and how quantum physics and all sorts of things in the universe has an element of structure. Like, we as an individual have a structure, right? And there's certain structures work, and there's certain structures don't work. There's certain structures that are good are good, and there's certain structures that are not good. And sometimes structure can help people see things, but a strong someone in a rebel wounding that has not matured and not moved through their spiritual growth, not moved past that, well, they have great power, because the rebel archetype and any of the rebel traits have this freedom, justice. They have a radicalness that sometimes can help break through things that we don't see. I was always somebody that was brought up very kind of, how could you say, quite strict, but I had a dad that was still open minded, right? But what I would have to say, I was very squashed. I wouldn't, I was a teenager. I became a bit rebellious, but most of my life, in some areas of my life, I struggled. But there was other areas of my life, my creative flow helped me be a wee bit more radical, because that was like how I did it. And that's the key. It's about helping the rebel archetype find a way to bring that freedom and focus into their work, into that, like, radical ideas, or help people break through old limitations, right? But if they're being very rebellious themselves, and they are not putting structure, it's like a business. A business is built on flow and structure, and there's certain things, like if you think about, that work better than others. That's just things, it's like proven fact. And if you just go completely, just do almost all freedom, the rebel who just wants freedom all the time has no structure or foundation in life, and finds it very difficult to create security and certain, because it's just about freedom. There's no structure, there's no foundation. So this is where some of the archetypes can really struggle. Now, there's loads of archetypes, and some of these things can cause problems, So we work our way towards the whole part of, if you look at Joseph Campbell's work, and there's lots of different interpretations of the hero's journey and the spiritual journey. I'm looking at from more the light worker's perspective and a business perspective and purpose. But if you think about all the challenges that we go through in life, and the challenges of when we reach in aspects of our life that hero, we become our own hero. And where we maybe fall down, because we all do, even people who reach great, and we would class as a hero of some kind, will still have elements of their life where they're not a hero. And in an archetypal perspective, so one of the things that I'm still doing the moment is Caroline Miz's, a course with Caroline Miz, and it's about looking at the archetypes in all your houses. So archetypes play different roles, and we can have different archetypes in our relationships, different archetypes in our work, in our even our home life, um, and money, how we look at money. So, for example, if you're a victim archetype or an orphan archetype, any of these type of archetypes, and your money, you will have a lot of problems around money and can look at money in a very unhealthy way, which is going to create lots of problems. Now, if you're a victim of that, you're going to blame everybody else for not having money, and you're going to want maybe everyone else to pay for things for you, or maybe look for people to do favors and things like that. So you're not, so that kind of can happen, right? Or you might actually be giving all your money away, right? Or constantly find your situation that people come and take your money or come and, so this is, it's really important to understand this. So when we're working through towards the hero's journey, it's about us facing challenges and recognizing what area are we stuck in. It's almost like frozen in. So that's the repeat patterns that we get stuck in. And one of the things that people is a great way to actually emphasize your shadow is actually through business, because business brings up so many different challenges, and you've got to be the hero of your own journey in your business, and it requires a certain a level of courage and being able to face things and look at your biggest shadows, and also, but really, really important, actually get clarity on your light and your gifts. If you cannot really see your gifts, you'll give your power over your tools, your techniques, and your products and services, and not own your gifts, right? Because a brand, particularly a soul line business, is not, I mean, of course, it has to be about, and you're selling the solution with your products and service. But often, one of the things when I ask people, and I get them to share what their gifts is, the words that they use and what they say, and just different ways they act, I can tell right away that they can't really see what their real gifts are. They're missing the point. They're not refined enough, or they can't see objectively, or what they're identifying their gifts is actually the tools they use or the techniques they use. They're missing the point. And that is why my I'm doing Unlock Your Soul's Gift course now. Basically, Unlock Your Soul's course, I'm doing a masterclass tonight, which is a bonus live with the course. But basically, it used to be called Identify Your Soul's Gifts course, and it's now Unlock Your Soul Gifts, right? And basically, this course is a course that helps you can use it as a constant thing as you go through your life, right? And it's about you identifying aspects of you and looking at yourself from, from an objective perspective, which is really important, because we often don't see ourselves as others see us. We can have very distorted views. We miss really important things, and often what we want our super gifts to be always our super gifts. It's what we want, because most people don't value who truly are, in essence, don't value who they already are, can't see their power, right? Or they think it's got to be this superhuman type thing, that it has to be this superpower. Now, where the superpowers are, their perception of what a superpower, their superpowers are their most innate gifts. So this course is designed in a way that it has a workbook, it has some modules. It had a previous coaching session, and that's one of the reasons why I'm upgrading it, because that course is, is a little bit long. The workbook has been upgraded and expanded. And tonight we're on Wednesday, the 20th of December. Myself and my good friend David Rabone, who's a healer, we're going to be doing a session tonight about helping you really unlock more in your life and soul gifts. Help you really unveiling and get in deeper Also, it's not just about going deep, it's about unlocking more of that, the energy and the essence, because often people are not owning the full essence of what they are. So it's about unlocking more of that essence, your soul essence, where your gifts are there, right? And getting more conscious about your gifts, but also about healing some of the biggest shadows that are showing up for you at the now, because it's your shadow element that is stopping you fully being in your purpose. It's stopping it being balanced and can cause you all sorts of problems and misalignment in your business. Um, so I would love to see here. The cost is only £44 for the program, and that includes the free live session with us tonight at 7 p.m. GMT time. Now, it will be recorded if you can't manage tonight, but I would love you for it to join us. It's a great opportunity to really not just unlock, but build your confidence, get more clarity, and feel more solid within yourself. And you know, look at yourself maybe from a slightly different perspective and maybe see the shadow elements that you've maybe the blind spots that you haven't seen that is actually stopping you maturing your hero's journey, maturing your spiritual growth, and helping you stay in your power. Because sometimes it's just that little tiny shift. It's that butterfly effect that can actually move you from victimhood to saboteur into the hero. It can be sometimes just a little shift can completely move you out of that um that most dominant trait that is actually pulling you down and is stopping you really fully step into alignment. Okay, so details below this video. Have a wonderful day and thank you for watching. Bye bye for now.